Okay, my name is Tim DePiro. I'm representing Mr. Heyman, and I just want to say that normally I would make no comment on a criminal case and recommend to my client that he make no comment. This is a highly unusual case. I've never had a client get arrested for talking too loud or anything similar to that. The only time I've got in trouble myself in Catholic school back in the day with the nuns when I talked too loud, but I've never heard anybody get in trouble criminally for talking too loud. I think it's kind of a really bizarre arrest in this particular case. Mr. Heyman, I know from reputation as being a mild-mannered guy. He cleared security before he went into the building. He had no intention of doing anything but ask a tough question, and he was persistent in asking the question. He can explain that to you, and we just don't understand why he got arrested. It just seems kind of way over the top.
Can you spell your name for me? I'm sorry.
D-I, capital P-I-E-R-O.
Thank you.
Dan, sort of walk us through what happened this afternoon.
Well, basically there were a number of people who were wanting to bring up the issue of pre-existing conditions under Trump care. And I've been covering, health care for, dating back to before the Affordable Care Act passed. So this is well-trodden ground for me. And so I was with them, and I had been working on something, a story about whether or not domestic violence is actually a pre-existing condition. Because in some cases before the Affordable Care Act, it was a pre-existing condition. A woman would get into a domestic violence situation and then end up being denied insurance, as strange as that sounds. So I wanted to ask Secretary Price about this. So we waited for them to come into the building. I waited for him to come into the building, and I was recording audio on my phone, and I reached it out to him past his staffers and the other people who were with him. And I asked him the question repeatedly, and he did not answer. He did not say whether domestic violence could be considered a pre-existing condition. And at some point, I think they, the Capitol Police, got an indication. I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure why, but at some point, I think they decided I was just too persistent in asking this question and trying to do my job. And so they arrested me.
How did the Capitol Police handle themselves about approaching them and letting you know?
They were. I mean, they put hands on me, although they didn't hurt me, certainly. So I was pulled aside, and they cuffed me. And I asked them, "Am I under arrest?" And they said yes. And I said, "If I'm under arrest, how come I haven't had my Miranda rights read to me?" And they said, "Well, we're not asking you any questions right now." And then later on, there was, usual kind of paperwork. I sat in an office, and they did paperwork, and then they came back and they said, "Okay, you have the right to remain silent." And I said, "I want a lawyer." And that's really, I mean, they were sort of behaving like police, like average police. I don't think that, well, I'm not gonna comment on whether or not this law is fair to arrest someone for disrupting a public gathering, a public meeting, a government meeting in a public place. But given that, if we accept that, then I don't think the police, the Capitol Police, they certainly didn't mistreat me. Let's put it that way.
Do you think this is setting a bad example for the press if we want to ask someone questions and next thing you know we're getting arrested?
I think it's a terrible example. I think it's dreadful.
Explain why.
I mean, well, this is my job. This is what I'm supposed to do. I am supposed to go and find out if somebody is going to be affected by this healthcare law. I mean, I was talking to Tim before. I said, a woman who undergoes domestic violence is in a domestic violence situation. Her life is 100 times worse than mine. You know, this is nothing compared to that. I think this is almost immaterial by comparison. And, you know, I think it's a question that deserves to be answered. And I think it's my job to ask questions, and I think it's my job to try and get answers. And I think as reporters, you probably understand that.
He was just doing his job.
I was just doing my job.
Was this in like the hallway of the main concourse, or was
Yes. Yes, this was in the hallway. There's the, let's see, it would be the west wing entrance.
Okay.
There's the public entrance, and then there's the west wing entrance, and this is between the west wing entrance and the rotunda.
So you were there as he was coming in and he was asking
Yeah.
questions.
Yep,
Did you ask
in a public space.
Did you tell us a little bit like how many times you asked him? Did you shout at all, or what?
Well, I probably asked it, I asked it a number of times. I have it on a recording. I haven't been able to review the recording yet. But I asked it a number of times, and he didn't say anything, so I persisted.
Did any Secret Service or Capitol Police tell you that you were in an area you shouldn't have been, or anything like that?
No one who identified themselves as a peace officer of any kind, until I was arrested, told me that I should not be where I was. In other words, as far as I can tell, no. I mean, there might have been an aide who said to me something that, you probably don't want to be here. And I said, why not? But I think that's getting too far afield. No police officer told me you're in the wrong place.
When they were arresting you, did you say I'm a reporter, or did you say who
Yeah,
you were?
oh yeah, I was wearing my press pass.
Is that a press pass for just the Capitol?
Yeah, it's an old one, but there's other ones. There's an
Right.
old, this is a press pass from 2006. Shows how long I've been covering this West Virginia State Capitol. Oh, and if you want to see, this is my jail ID. How cool is that, huh?
Did they say anything when you said that you were a reporter? Did that change their demeanor at all?
No.
Or were they still...
No. And I'm wearing, it says Public News Service. I was specifically wearing this shirt because I was working.
Could you tell us a little bit just about what Public News Service is and where it is at?
It's a news service based in Colorado. I think we're in 36 states now. And we provide news to media outlets. We also put it out ourselves, but we provide media. Hold on just a second. Let me get rid of this. Dan Heyman speaking. Hey. Yeah, let me call you back. I'm talking to reporters, so I'll give you a ring back. Okay, bye. That's my editor. Which, as you probably are aware, is a call that must be answered. So the Public News Service is it's a nonprofit based in Colorado, and we are a news service in the sense that we put our stories out ourselves, but we also provide media outlets content, and then they pick it up or not as they see fit. And there'll be a story about this. You can find it. We're putting something together. The Public News Service is putting something together, and it will be on publicnewsservice.org. So,
How long have you been with them?
Since spring of 2009.
Okay.
I've been a reporter for better than 30 years, but I've been with the Public News Service since 2009.
Now, have you ever had any situations like this before, or is this the first time for you?
First time I've ever been arrested for asking a question. First time I've ever heard of anybody being arrested for asking a question. I've gotten into situations where people have yelled at me, and I've had people who've accused me of being biased or questioned my legitimacy or my professionalism, but I've never been arrested before.
I looked at the provision when they talked about the law that you allegedly broke, and it said it as long as you don't if you're interrupting governmental proceedings, provided that it's not a peaceable assembly, do you feel like you were being peaceable or?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, unless poking a phone at someone is considered an act of violence. There was nothing. I mean, I was.
You're not poking
unarmed.
it physically. You're just near it.
I was just holding it up.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't mean that. Yeah, I'll let my lawyer answer all the important questions. But basically, what I did was I was holding the phone out like this, and I was trying to get as close to Secretary Price as possible for obvious reasons. And that was all there was to it, and I was yelling out questions, and that was it.
Who else was around at the time this happened? Is there anybody else from media or anything? Or?
There were some protesters who were down the hall. There were a bunch of what looked like staff for Secretary Price. And I think that was about it. I think there may have been someone who tweeted out a picture of the arrest. I'm not sure. Jake Lance may have sent out a picture. But I think I was the only reporter that I know of there.
Any other questions?
They said, what was your bond? Are you allowed to talk about your bond? Or?
Bond was $5,000 and 10% cash, and one of his employers or somebody associated with the news agency wired the money and we posted it.
And I guess when will there be a hearing?
Oh yeah, there'll be a preliminary hearing at some point.
Have they set it, or are they?
No, they don't get set that quickly. It's usually within 20 days.
If anyone were to criticize you and say that you were in the wrong, how would you respond to that?
Well, I was doing my job. I mean, we want these questions answered. We as a society want. I mean, in abstract, if you ask someone, they say they like reporters to be investigative, to dig, to be, aggressive in pursuing the truth. And if they don't like the stories I write, that's fine. They can criticize me all they want. If they want to question my motives, that's fine. If they find fault with something that I've written, that's fine too. But just saying that I shouldn't be able to do my job is a bit ridiculous. And let me point out, in 30 years, this is something that maybe since I'm in radio doesn't happen as often as some of the print guys. But I have had to run one retraction in 30 years of journalism. Okay, I got the name of a company wrong, and we had to retract the name and do a correction. I've never been sued. I've never even really been threatened seriously with a lawsuit. I've had some coal companies have threatened to sue me before, but I've never been found guilty of libel in a civil or criminal case or anything like that. And I've been doing this, like I said, every day for 30 years. So, okay, if you want to criticize me, if you find fault with what I've written, then good. I will respond to those criticisms in due course.
Like I said, feel free to check out his reputation. He's got an excellent reputation in the business.
Yeah, I mean, I've written for the New York Times. I've written for extensive number of pieces, long format pieces for National Public Radio, spot news for NPR. I've written pieces for the AP, for the Dallas Morning News, for the Christian Science Monitor. Public news service is my main gig now, but I have been, in touch with the folks at the New York Times about some other issues just within a matter of the last few days. That's totally unrelated to this.
Do you think you would have been treated differently if you were perhaps representing to have like a New York Times logo on your shirt, or
I don't know. I don't think so. I think that there is we're in a period of antipathy towards the press, and I think being the outlet, the kind of press that you're working for, does not defend you against that antipathy. It's possible that they would have, decided it was hands off if it was, the Charleston Gazette or something. But then again, who knows? It might have been worse.
Okay, Joe.
All right.
Grab
Thanks.
that microphone from there.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thanks for waiting for us.
Yeah, and I'm sorry I kind of rambled on a bit.
That's okay.
Thank you
We
for
can
your
edit
time.
this stuff.
Yeah.
You understand how